A lawyer for the 50 migrants who Ron DeSantis flew up to Martha's Vineyard, gave a press conference and gave the details, gave us way more details than we could have ever imagined about Ron DeSantis' scheme and just how illegal and inhuman this entire thing really was.
Arrived last night make it clear that they were lied to again and again and fraudulently induced to board the planes. They were told there was a surprise present for them and that there would be jobs and housing awaiting for them when they arrived. This was obviously a sadistic lie. Not only did those responsible for this stunt know that there was no housing and no employment awaiting the migrants, they also very intentionally chose not to call ahead to any single office authority on Martha's Vineyard so that even the most basic human needs arrangements could be made. Ensuring that no help awaited the migrants at all was the entire point. They were provided with a cartoonishly simple map of Martha's Vineyard and the United States and a brief brochure containing snippets from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts website and instructions to change their address with USCIS when they relocated. This is especially troubling as anyone with even the most basic understanding of the immigration proceedings knows that USCIS was not the agency with whom the migrants would have to record their addresses and has nothing to do with their cases in any way. It is clear that this was an intentional attempt to ensure that these migrants were removed in absentia when they failed to change their address with the proper agency. This was a purposeful derailment designed to prevent people from complying with federal immigration policies. This is problematic because the state should not be interfering with federal immigration policy. Before they boarded the planes, the migrants were processed by agents of the Department of Homeland Security, who listed falsified addresses on the migrants' paperwork. Agents apparently chose random homeless shelters all across the country, from Washington to Florida, to list the migrants' mailing addresses, even when told by the migrants that they had no address in the U.S. According to the paperwork provided to them, the migrants are required to check in with ICE office nearest to the fake address chosen for them by DHS or be permanently removed from the United States, with some required to check in as early as this coming Monday. It could not be clearer that this is an attempt to ensure that these people are ordered removed, even as they try as hard as they can to comply with the instructions provided to them. There is no other reason to list as someone's mailing address a homeless shelter in Tacoma, Washington, when they ship him to Massachusetts. It is sickeningly cruel, throwing obstacles in the way of people fleeing violence and oppression, some of whom walked through 10 countries in the hopes of finding safety. It is shameful and inhuman. Many of these victims were deprived of medical care despite clear existing injuries. These are human beings who were deprived of basic human rights.
Seeing Americans like that respond to just disgusting human beings like Ron DeSantis is gives me so much hope, right? And reminds me that the majority of Americans, the plentiful majority of Americans, are decent human beings. Ron DeSantis is going to try to run for the president in 2024. That's why, he and Greg Abbott are going tit for tat on who can be, tougher on these migrants, right? When really what they're doing is they're just trying to out extreme one another on the immigration, because the immigration matter, because they can't just go, stroll down a golden elevator and then talk about how, Mexicans are murderers and rapists, right? Because it's already been done. And without the guy who did that in the picture, they need to try to, outdo one another for, who's tougher on immigration. So, when we think about Ron DeSantis having power being in charge of the federal government and what he would do to try to politically attack Democrats. Like, because that's what this was, right? It was a political scheme to try to sow chaos, to try to sow chaos in Martha's Vineyard, in Washington, D.C., with President Biden. And it really hasn't done that. It's blown back largely on Ron DeSantis because it just exposes him as the soulless person that he is. But imagine him having the power of the federal government, and imagine the tricks that he would pull if he's doing this with just being governor of Florida. And that's a scary thought.